And now, from the Room 111 studios, it's Hacking Engagement with James Sternovic.
Hey there, listener. Welcome back to the Hacking Engagement podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Episode 148, Utilizing Assessment to Bond with Kids. This seems like a totally incongruent title. How in the world can you use assessment to forge strong relationships with students? And yet in this episode, my guest and I will attempt to answer this question. The key is student revision based on teacher feedback. Now, two tech tools that are instrumental in this process are the Google extension Mote and an app called Voxer. Now, both are going to be featured in this episode. I have a link to both in my show notes. Educators need to stop conducting assessment as an event, like a one-time event. They need to transform it into more of a process. Students learn so much when they go back and fix and improve. Successful revisions typically take a healthy collaboration between students and teachers. That, dear friends, is fertile ground for relationships to evolve. To help in this interesting exploration, I conscripted one of my students. Layne Neuhart is a wonderful person. She has a bottomless intellectual curiosity and is a blast to interact with. She's going to be a champion at forging positive relationships with the lucky students that will one day be in her language arts class. Now, before we get into the episode, I want to give a shout out to the text we utilize in my assessment class. Classroom Assessment for Student Learning. This is linked in the show notes. Classroom Assessment for Student Learning by numerous authors is a wonderful resource. It's in this text that I found a template that I applied to all of my lessons. This template is called the 7 Strategies of Assessment for Learning. Assessment for Learning. Formative assessment, baby. I'm going to list for you the 7. And I'd strongly encourage you to apply them to your next lesson creation. Here's number 1. Make certain that students understand the learning target. Number 2. Provide examples of strong and weak work. Number 3. Provide regular descriptive feedback. We talk a lot about that. Number 4, teach and then encourage self-assessment. 5, focus on just one learning target per prompt. 6, teach and encourage students to revise their work. We're going to talk a lot about that one too. And then number 7 is encourage students to collaborate. I'm very proud of this episode. It's important, man. Buckle up. I think you're going to love it. Here's my elevator pitch for my brand new book, Teaching in Magenta. This book provides 100 ways to create a magnificent day in your classroom. Once you start stringing some magenta days together, you and your students will experience profound well-being and deep joy. That's Teaching in Magenta, which is now available on Amazon's virtual shelves. So here we are in the Room 111 studios, and Sturdivant is on the mend.
Yes.
I survived COVID. I sound a little better. I'm with a friend of mine. Her name is Layne Neuhart. Say hello, man.
Hello, nice to meet you all.
And she went through COVID too, right?
Yes, I did. Back in, it was after Thanksgiving.
So we're 2 COVID veterans, but we both have masks on.
Yes.
We're just being careful. So if we sound a little muffled, we're in the same place. A lot of times I'll do these things on Skype, but today we're right beside each other because we just got out of class with one another.
Yes, amazing.
Okay, now, before we get started, I mean, I like to just turn over the microphone to my friends. I just like to deputize you to get after it. So let's tell everyone who is Layne Neuhart.
So, that's such a meta question
it
about
is.
Myself.
I think that's a cool thing to say too. That's such a meta question. I love that response.
Yeah, it's very. So I am an AYA education major, and I'm going to teach.
Explain what that is.
So
AYA.
Essentially, that's adolescent to young adult.
Right.
I'll be teaching language arts, and that's about the 7th through 12th grade range.
Perfect.
I I chose that because I'm a nerd. I love to read. I love to write. I like baking. I'm basically a grandmother in a 20-year-old's body. It's amazing. I grew up on a farm, so I mean, that was awesome.
So you're a farm girl?
Yes, sort of. And I went to a local school not far from here. Mm-hmm. And other than that, I mean, there's not much to tell.
So you grew up in Eastern Ohio?
Yes.
In a rural place?
Yes.
You're working through an education program at Muskingum University.
Yes.
You say you're 20 years old?
20, yes.
That's a really good age.
I know. I can't believe I'm not a teenager anymore. That's what's like, it's a revelation.
Well, you know what? Today I turned 60.
Oh my goodness. Happy birthday.
So I don't feel like a teenager anymore.
You didn't tell me. Happy birthday. We got it impromptu.
Well, what the heck. So let me ask you this. Are you a junior then?
I am a junior.
And you have one more year of undergrad.
Yes.
And then what's after that?
Hopefully. I want to get a job preferably around somewhere where I grew up. I mean, I know a lot of people like to move away. They like to, get out of their small hometowns. But I think there's just so many amazing things about growing up in a small hometown. Mm-hmm. I mean, you have a community that's amazing.
Right. Teachers are a big deal in small towns.
Yeah, and I wouldn't trade, the experience that I've had growing up in that area for anything. So hopefully at some point I'd like to get back here. I know that wherever the job takes you is where you're going to go initially, and that's perfectly fine. I think that would be even better for experience. Hopefully one day I'll get a master's. I'd like to do that sooner than later because I want to start a family eventually, and, I'm only 20. You heard it first.
Do you see yourself as an administrator someday?
I'm not sure. I mean, I definitely think that it's something I want to keep on the table. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I love interaction so much, and especially with kids. I know that administration has something to do. Yeah. You interact with the kids and you interact with your staff, but I just really love that in person with the kids.
That is teaching. Such an interesting observation because my wife was a middle school principal.
Yeah.
And she was good at it. But it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I looked at that job and thought, I don't think I'd like that as much because I would miss that interaction with the students.
Yeah, I think I would be fine with organization and getting things on task. I mean, that's fine, and just being in that management position. But I just really, that's why I chose teaching, is because I always knew I wanted to do something that was serving others. Mm-hmm. That was a big realization for me, is that whatever I did, I wanted it to be helping other people.
So you made a decision early on in life that you wanted to be an educator. Talk about that.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was super early on. I sort of went back and forth. My other possibility at the time was psychology, which is also help. I wanted to do counseling. But I really liked...
You'd be good at that, man.
Oh, thank you. But I really liked... I'd always tutored friends from middle school on. Spanish was one of the ones I vividly remember. I would help my friends. I would tutor them. I would have people come to me about things, and I just loved that. I loved being able to find a way to get them to understand. I mean, and you would have to try a few different ways, and you would, finally find how, it clicked. They got it. And for me, and I loved English. I loved reading and writing, as I said before, as a leisure activity. And it was a way for me to escape from the world, and I wanted to share that love and passion with other people. So it seemed like the perfect option.
Well, I'm going to throw some compliments your way right now. Because you're going to have students like yourself in class someday. And you're really going to enjoy those students because Layne is one of those people, she wants to understand stuff. It's not like, okay, I've got this done, I'm going to hand it in. It's more along the lines of, I don't really understand this. Talk to me about this. Explain this to me. That is the heart of learning.
Oh, thanks.
This intellectual curiosity. You have one of the strongest intellectual curiosities of any student I've ever had.
Oh my gosh! I'm not gonna be able to walk out the door here. I'm gonna have such a big head.
How are you going to encourage that in future students?
To be honest with you, I was such a different student in high school with who I am now. And not necessarily at the root, but just in the way that I did things. I was disorganized. I was a procrastinator. In fact, I call myself a recovering procrastinator because I have a very strict schedule that I follow.
She is on top of things.
Yeah. Man. So And I didn't ever think, like, I didn't want to do any more learning. I was like, I'm done. But now it's shifted so much, especially with my education over education.
Yeah.
Because I realized that I am someone who loves to learn. I just wasn't always learning the things that I wanted to.
Okay.
And that isn't to say that that was negative. You know, everybody needs a little bit of science here and there, which is not my forte. But now that I'm doing things that I really love and I'm passionate about and I want to be good at, it's so much different. Like, I can see myself going on to get a master's and a PhD eventually. Like, I love to keep learning.
You would absolutely shine at that.
Well,
just understand there's going to be some students in your English class.
That's what I was going to get to, is with students that aren't super engaged. And this is a problem that me and another professor and a fellow, she's a grad student, we've been talking about and trying to tackle is, what do you do with those students who don't want to be engaged? Or they don't want to participate. They don't care. Why am I learning
I have
this?
a great answer for that. You build a relationship with them.
Yeah. And that's we've been talking to different English teachers.
You build a relationship with
Every single one says the more you build a relationship and show them that you're only interested in what's best for them, the more they will give back to you.
Now, I agree with that. And that's been my experience. That's what I've seen.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to get to that. But first of all, let me just clarify one thing. So you see yourself teaching high school English?
Yes.
Middle school English? Something like that?
Hypothetically, middle school, 7 through 8, I will be licensed to do.
Sure. Okay. And these, you're open to where you want to teach right now?
Yes.
Your preference is in a small town?
Preference is eventually, I'm a big family person, I should emphasize. Yeah. I love my family. My family lives near each other. So imagining a life not having them very intertwined with it wouldn't be... would it be ideal for me?
Understood. That's good that you know that about yourself. Now, you and I were talking yesterday about assessment and how my class has caused you to think about the concept differently. Now, before I ask her to explain, Layne is in my assessment class, 341, Muskingum University assessment. That's how we've got to know each other.
Yes.
So what is it about that class that's caused you to think about things differently?
You know, the thing is that I used this recently in a paper I wrote. My idea was picked up, turned on its side, and then picked up again and thoroughly shaken. And that's how I feel like when I went into this class. I was like, assessment. You know, I'd heard great things about you. I remember sitting outside of your class last semester and hearing you just really engage the classroom. And I was like, this will be great. But assessment to me had always been from a student perspective of a hurdle that you had to get by. It wasn't...
I'm going to stop you just 1 second, because what you're saying is so interesting, because I was asked to teach this class 2 years ago, and my reaction to teaching the class was almost identical. So keep going.
No, I mean, it was definitely, I was like, whatever, make a test.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
See what they know. But it changed so much. I think the biggest thing that has changed for me is this idea of assessment of learning and assessment for learning, which is he's a great professor, so it's not hard to learn a lot in here. But just the idea that, I keep repeating myself, we aren't just measuring what they know. We can use assessment as a tool to take them where they need to go. And even though that should be a very obvious component of it, it's not.
No.
I know as a student... From that perspective, I've seen it as, okay, I need to get this done. This is just something that needs to get passed. It won't, whatever, study, go on, whatever. I've never seen it, or very rarely seen it used as, okay, we're going to take this and we're going to do something with it that's going to help you afterward.
I love what you're saying. So, in other words, you might have looked at assessment as kind of a one-time event. It's like it happens, now we move on to something else. Whereas you like the idea of it being more of a process that's spread out over time where a student can start at one point and keep growing.
And I might be biased because I'm an English teacher here, So I'm looking at, reading comprehension, which is not a one-time thing. You are not going to take that concept and just be like, okay, I'm taking it for a test. That is not only a school-long, academic career-long skill, it is a lifelong skill.
Right.
As is writing. Writing it's called the writing process, not the sit down, write, and you're
Perfect.
graded.
I like that.
So I just feel like especially in the field that I'm going into, it's so vital to see this as more than a one-time thing, because it's not.
I love that answer. Now, a big part of it is the interactions that you and I have. The interactions that I have with the students.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So a big part of this is feedback. A big part of feedback is developing a relationship.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about how you and I have interacted outside of class.
Well, I should emphasize here that I am, to avoid being the high school student that I was, or procrastinator, not doing anything, I am very much detail-oriented, and I like to know where we're going, what we're doing, what's expected of me.
Right.
And it's not that I need answers spelled out for me. I'm perfectly capable. But I want to know that I'm giving everything that I can to fulfill the expectation.
Right.
So that meant that you received a lot of Voxes from me.
Well, let's talk about what are you talking about Voxer? What is that?
Voxer is this amazing little, it's like a walkie-talkie app, except you download on your phone.
Yeah.
We have a whole class full of students that can Vox you. I think everybody probably does it individually because we're too embarrassed to show our voices to a whole classroom. But it's been great. And so I reached out to you. First, it was that, just talking about assignments, talking about what did you want me to do on here? Your feedback. Well, how about this? And then I think from there, as we started to get into the meat of the semester, so to speak, it was just assignments. You know, you coming back to me. You used Mote, which is a tool on Google Docs to be able to give audio feedback. And that was really important for me because not only do I like to know exactly what is expected, exactly what we're doing, but I love feedback. I mean, and good and bad. I try to take it with, you know, as much purpose as I can, take it and do better. And I think that was really great for me, especially in our classroom, was having you talk to me, tell me, I really like this part, even things that weren't. That was what was great, is that sometimes it'd be like, I really like this word choice. And, you know, like, maybe it wasn't, like, the super, like, important, but it was just nice to be recognized. And then other parts were like, well, how about this? And then I could talk back to you.
Well, the thing I love so much about Voxer, and I'm hoping that you will take this mantle and utilize it when you're the teacher.
Yeah.
Because I know you. I know you very well as a result of Voxer. For instance, our statements and our conversations about, you know, a prompt often turn into, hey, what'd you have for dinner? Hey, what are you watching on Netflix?
I mean, we have gotten into different realms of, you know, but I mean, then I'm watching a new great television series and I'm like, hey, I watched it all in a week.
Now, I will say this, then, the flip side of that is, Layne is open, and so are her classmates about saying, Sturdivant, I didn't understand what you said today in class. Sturdivant, I don't understand this part of the prompt. So in other words, this feedback is not just one way. You as the instructor have this wonderful opportunity to learn how to become a better instructor.
Yeah, because that bond has been built.
Yeah.
And now it's like, you know, this, what is this? No, I'm just kidding. I would never say that. But, you know, you can give that critique or you can give that question.
But you and I are comfortable around each other enough that you can say something that's bothering you, and I can, like, point out something without you.
Yeah, and I feel like, if anything, it's going to help me. And then it clarifies things for both of us, and it's great. I definitely don't see any, and that's what's great is once you have that connection.
Right.
I know that you are very actively use self-reflective tools as well as reflection from students to gauge where you're at in your performance as a professor, which I love. And I actually, this is true, folks. I took one of the tools that you used, which was the Google Forms, which I don't know if you had used that for the self-reflection or not. It was something, And in a lesson that I taught, a 3-day lesson, because I'm just a baby teacher here, you know, just small things at a time. But I used that at the end of my lesson and had students tell me what they think I could have done better. Right. And it was amazing to see that even after 3 days, where they don't have as great of a connection, but they felt that they could tell me. I have received a lot of good reviews, but I also received some critiques, and it was awesome. I can do better in the future with that. Right. So I just think anytime that you use these tools that are interactive, that are letting students feel like they're being heard, which I think you've done such a great job with, it helps.
And you know something about that example, because you came in and talked to me after you got those that feedback.
Yeah.
You were kind of focused on the negative, and I said, hey, look, you have all these positives. But, but here's something about that, too, is that all of a sudden then the students, hey, I need to work on my relationship with this kid who had like a critique. Now, that critique might have been very, like, given in the best spirit whatsoever.
Yeah.
But then okay, this student has some dissatisfaction with the way I'm instructing. That's the one that I need to work on my relationship with. It's a great barometer.
Yeah, it's like this. I just see it as it's so entwined with one another. I mean, there's just you can't have a great instruction without having this sort of relationship with students.
Okay. One more question. I know the answer to this. I'm setting you up here, but obviously, I'm almost like putting words in your mouth here. But it's obvious that a recorded audio communicates a lot more than a typed comment.
Yeah, I think it's so much easier too.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
right.
the other thing is that I could type you a novel. I mean, I'm an overwriter, but the point is that me telling you, and it's so clearer sometimes. There's so much that can't be said in a typed message that can be, and inflection and how you're saying it. Right. I think sometimes a student, I know I've had this happen with my own work and feedback that I've gotten, but also when I'm typing back to students or if I'm ever working with students, it's like when you type, it's like a text. It can get so misconstrued. You could say, work on this, and it could be like, work on this. Like, mean, assertive. Yeah. No, the assertive is mean,
all caps rant can be a rant or excitement.
Yeah, and so, there's no, or you could just be like, hey, let's work on this. It's just, there's so much to be gained from having that component.
She is such an amazing student. When I say that our relationship evolved on Voxer, she was voxing me before the class started.
Oh yeah, I'm.
So listen, if you're getting anything out of this, start using audio feedback. It's really important, and there's lots of ways to do it. You can use an app like Voxer. You can use an add-on like Mote. You can find a way to do it. And then you have
students like me, like, pestering you.
All right. I love it. Love it.
And you're like, why? But it's great.
Okay, I'm going to lay something on you here, because one of the things that we've done in 341, the class that Layne is in, is we've advocated these 7 strategies for assessing teacher performance on a lesson. And these have been like a template that I try to apply to myself on a regular basis, and I'm promoting this for these future teachers. So I'm going to read them. Number 1, make certain students understand the learning target. Number 2, provide examples of strong and weak work. Number 3, provide regular descriptive feedback. That's what we were just talking about. Number 4, teach, then encourage self-assessment. Number 5, focus on just one learning target per prompt. 6, teach and encourage students to revise their work. 7, encourage student collaboration. Now, that's a pretty tall...
That's a tall order.
That's a tall order for every daggone lesson. But the more you try to get as many as you can...
the easier.
Just a better lesson. So focus on a few of these. Why did these... and you can talk about them all 7 collectively, or you can talk about some individually, but why did they make an impact on you?
I think for me, again, and I think a lot of our instruction and our experiences are what impacts our instruction and our future. Mm-hmm. So I think of myself as a student. I think of my friends' experience as a student. I think of how I am as a person. Mm-hmm. And it, like, for example, the first learning target, or the first strategy, is making clear learning targets. Right. And because I'm an English teacher, I came up with this really cool analogy. So, you give a child a basketball or a ball. They start kicking it around, and you're like, oh, great, like, they know how to play soccer. No, it's a basketball. It's not a soccer ball. But how did they know that? I mean, let's say this kid had no understanding of what this was. You just gave them a ball, and they're like, okay, it's a sphere shape. I guess I'll, like, start kicking it. And But you didn't tell them, oh, this ball is meant to dribble. This ball is meant to go into a basket. So for me, when you're making a clear learning target, you can give all the materials and activities you want to a student, but you need to give them that guide to move them in the right space.
Oh, baby.
And for me, and that's why I was saying experience drives what you do in the future.
Yeah.
I like to know what I'm doing. I love college. You know what I loved college for, among other things, was syllabi.
Yeah, right.
I love to know what we're doing when we're doing it. I use it all the time. High school, I got so frustrated because I was like, what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
Sports, I liked sports, but I just hated, I wanted to know at practice. I wanted that layout of, what are we going to do today? So I could pace myself. I knew I was, I mean, I am a little bit neurotic in that sense.
But I would say that a lot of students are like that. They're sitting there wondering, what are we doing here? What's the point of this?
Yeah, and that goes into, feedback. I continued my analogy. I wrote it down here because, again, I'm just, the biggest, English stereotypical teacher ever. But, so this child finds out, okay, I'm supposed to go down the court with this, and I'm supposed to make a hoop. But they don't dribble it. They just start running with it, and then they throw it. And they just keep doing it. Because you never told them, okay, now you're supposed to dribble it.
Yeah.
So again, that goes into feedback. If we aren't telling them what is right and great, and they should keep doing that, or what's maybe they're having areas of weakness in, then how do we expect them to get any better? I've had that experience myself where, I've gotten a bad grade on something, or what I consider bad, but there was nothing there to tell me, oh, this is why it wasn't right.
Yeah.
Okay. Or I got late feedback that came a month later after I'd already done 10 other assignments just like it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that one was wrong.
Yeah.
But I just repeated it, and I have 10 more bad grades.
Awesome.
So
keep going, man. I love this.
I know. I'm on a roll now. I mean, I wrote a few down that I really feedback for me and making sure things are clear. You're giving them this roadmap to learning that they know what they're going to do and they know where they need to go. Mm-hmm. And they know where you're trying to take them. I mean, it just gives you a purpose. It doesn't make it seem so you come in the classroom, okay, I guess we're going to go through the motions of whatever this teacher gives me. They know I'm trying to learn this skill, know this knowledge, all of the learning types, be able to reason this way.
I'm going to jump in here for just a second, and this will tickle you because it might surprise you. So this was about maybe 10 or 15, maybe 15 years ago. I'm teaching high school, and at that point, our administration made this big push to incorporate more formative assessment in class. So they're having these teachers' meetings, and they're talking all about formative assessment. And finally, I just put up my hand. I said, I'm not really sure what you mean by formative assessment. I mean, for me to say that now just is kind of comical.
Yeah, but I mean,
But the thing was, the administrator got frustrated with me. How can you not know that? It's well, you're leading the learning activity here. Shouldn't you know who knows what? Or why are you making the assumptions everybody knows what you're talking about? So what you're saying is so important because when you get in a teaching role, you make broad assumptions about what your students know and what they don't know, and that they might be totally off.
Yes, and that's another thing is it's so easy to forget that things I know now compared to a year ago, I think of I didn't know what pedagogy was.
No.
I didn't know I could guess what differentiation was.
No kidding.
Use the base words. But, I didn't know everything that went into it. I could have told you RT. But now I'm now that I have this well of knowledge, I need to remember that not everyone does. Mm-hmm. And even with vocabulary.
Yes.
Vocabulary, sorry.
Yes.
Which is just a little bit off. That is the clarity purpose. That's the first formative learning strategy. But, I even know that sometimes, my boyfriend will be I don't know what that word means. And he's a smart, intelligent guy.
What a great barometer, again.
But, and then I'm am I going into this classroom? And I even did it in this 3-day lesson that I had before. I realized that some of the words I was using, I was okay, let's bring it down.
Yep.
I can use them, but
Yep.
let's make sure that I use some other words that I know they will know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just hard because you don't want to assume that they don't know it in the sense that you think they're not as intelligent.
Right.
But you also don't want to assume that they do and then like risk them missing out on that vital part of content.
Hey, would you agree that my learning targets are pretty simplistic?
Oh yeah, they're super great.
And then this is a college class, so just keep them simple, man.
Oh yeah, keep it simple, stupid, as they say. KISS. But yeah, and it's just making it clear is so and then you assume things. You assume they know it, and they don't. And then you're like, okay, great. I just taught you this thing that you didn't even have the base knowledge of. That's amazing.
Okay, so I mean, I love what you're saying. I always love what you're saying. And so you're going to incorporate these ideas into your future classroom.
Oh, yes, for sure.
But then how are your students going to play a role?
I definitely want my students to, after evaluating who I want to be as a teacher, I think that of that as more of what do I want to do as a teacher. I've come to realize that for me, teaching and the relationship that I have with my students goes beyond just, I'm going to measure how you write and read.
Right.
It is, I want to see them as the whole person. I think every student has potential. And in that way, I want to have them as involved in their learning as possible. I think the more involved and engaged you are in what you're doing, the more you're going to care about it. I don't want to be the teacher, even though I love to talk. Another reason I went into teaching. I don't want to be just standing up there talking and not. I want them to be talking too. I want them to be thinking. I want them to be going deep.
That's going to be a challenge for you. Because I know some very successful teachers like you, and one of them is Laura Wood, who you talked to. Laura Wood called my wife up the other day, and I'll bet you she was on there for 50 minutes. I mean, I couldn't. We're trying to watch This Is Us. And it was just like, I might as well just give up. So, but here's what Laura does so effectively. And this is what I'll challenge you to do, and you'll be good at it. When you ask a question, you have to be very patient in terms of getting an answer. And if there's silence there, you're just gonna have to deal with it.
See, that is and that is actually one of the critiques I got from my cooperating teacher was give more wait time.
Yes.
Because it's not that I have a problem with silence. It's just like, I'm trying to facilitate. And I did have people talk.
You had a million things you want to get done in this period.
Oh, yeah. And I definitely can see that becoming something that I need to work on. But I'm willing to do the time. I mean, that's the problem with over-talking is you never stop. As you can see, I'm doing it right now.
No, listen. So Laura Wood is a master language arts teacher that I connected Layne with, and they had this wonderful conversation. And Laura can talk.
Oh,
But she is one of the best questioners I've ever seen because she'll toss out a question.
Wait it out.
And then she will wait it out. She's really good at it. So that'll be a challenge. But you know this challenge.
Yes.
And so you can act upon it.
Yes. And I think the more you're aware of like the things that you need to work on, the better you can do to improve it.
Okay.
But I was going to say, in terms of these 7 directives, and putting this into my classroom, aside from just having my students be super engaged and super involved in their own learning, I really want them, even if we're doing a learning target, I want them to be a part of, like, how do you think we should assess this? That's something that we've talked about. How do you think that we can adequately show that you've learned this? What do you think this looks like? I think part of making clear learning targets is showing how it's going to be applicable to real life.
I like that. I like that. And you could also give them the standard and say, you make a student-friendly learning target.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Which I think, depending on what grade level, I think my licensure area, 7th through 12th, would be perfect for that because they're at the point where they can understand. For lower grades, it could be more difficult, but yeah, for sure, giving them the standard and saying, what do you think you need to know out of here? With descriptive feedback, again, I want it to be a two-way street. I give you feedback, you give me feedback on your feedback, on my feedback that I gave to you. I think we've done that before on using Mote, like I've talked back to you, and then it never ends. But also, I want their feedback on me as a teacher because I can't expect myself to just stay stagnant and complacent where I'm at. I want to continually grow.
Every assessment you give is an opportunity to learn how to become a better teacher.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can see like where your students were weak You can go back and look at your instruction in that learning target and think, oh, how can I do that better? You can also hit up your students and say, what'd you struggle with? What could I do better on the next assessment?
Yeah.
What was unclear? Asking those questions is a great learning tool for any educator, and it builds trust. And that's what we're talking about in here. We're talking about building those relationships. Yeah. Because if a teacher's coming to a student and saying, hey, tell me how I can do this better.
And then they're like, no, I'm not going to tell you. Like, I don't trust you to not get mad. Yeah, I definitely...
Right, that's a really good point. It might take a little while to build that trust so the kids are comfortable enough to do that. And if that's the case, if they're not ready, then
yeah, and I think
take time.
Beyond them being interactive in their learning or engaged in their learning, again, as I said before, the whole student is what's really important to me.
Yes.
It's not just how well you do at English or how great of a writer you are, how terrible of a writer you are. I mean, I know we're not all naturally. I have my struggles with, you should see me in science. I mean, it's a train wreck. But, you know, I see them as people that are going to go into their life, and I want to give them the best foot forward. So building that bond for me is just vital. I mean, it's truly so vital to me. But, and like with the other parts of the formative strategies, like revision, being able to self-assess. Yeah. I'm terrible at that at times, to be honest with you. I'm either too critical or I'm too like, oh no, I did great.
Yeah.
So I think teaching that into collaboration, that's a lifelong skill.
So you look at these 7 as tools to develop those relationships.
Yes. I mean, they're basically, there's just so much you can do. I mean,
because I thought what you said about the trust part was really intuitive, where you're asking a student for some feedback, and the student was like, you know, well, am I going to get in trouble for telling you that?
Yeah, I mean,
that's such a great observation. So in other words, by working on feedback, by empowering students to create learning targets
and want to be involved. I mean,
right.
You're showing them that you care about what they have to say.
I mean, because most people don't look at assessment this way.
I didn't before I had this class. I mean, I will be honest, it's definitely changed the way that I viewed it as just a two-dimensional. But it's so rich.
Yes.
In terms of what it can offer you. It's just how you use it.
Well, Layne, I had the same experience as you did. I was asked to teach this class a couple years ago, and I thought, that sounds boring.
Yeah, it's sort of like, watch paint dry.
I think I've probably enjoyed teaching this more than any class I can remember because it is so applicable. And when I'm talking about, hey, you might want to do it this way, and I see heads nodding going, yeah, that would be a better way than the way it was done when I was the student, then that's a powerful thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think...
that's a powerful thing.
Because we all have stuff to say about it. We all can think back on assessments where we're like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Okay. And I think that until this class, and I've talked to other people on the course, it's like, we didn't think to even question it. It was like, you didn't think to think about it.
That's great.
And so... It's been an amazing experience. And again, I mean, I look forward to our class every Wednesday. And it's just...
Me too.
It's been eye-opening. Yeah, I know you're pretty quiet over there. Like, ugh,
hey,
I don't know.
so here's your chance. I mean, you haven't entered the teaching ranks, but you will. And you'll be incredibly successful.
Oh, I hope.
But sometimes older teachers are not inclined to maybe look at somebody who hasn't even taught for advice. But I think it's crucial because you've been a student a long time.
Yes, that's true. I've been a student, I'm a veteran student.
And you've been in an education program where you've had to think about what it would be like to be a teacher. What's one piece of advice you could give to educators that listen to this program?
Okay. Here's what I'll say is, first of all, to anyone listening to this that's an educator, I do realize my role right now. I am merely a puppy, a doe in the headlights when it comes to teaching. But I think one of the things that I really want to bring with me, and I think this applies to any part of your teaching, so I don't have to narrow it down, it's the reflectiveness. It's not only the self-reflection, but it's having the students reflect because they will tell you what they need.
Yeah.
And I say that so surely, like I've been in the class a few times, but I just do think that's true. I think that applies to if you think you're having problems with content, if you think you're having problems with instructing, if you think you're having problems with relationships, taking the time to self-reflect, think about what you did, come back, ask students to reflect on different kinds of things. Having that conversation not only builds that bond, but you know that you will not stay complacent because you're constantly critiquing your work.
I love it, man. I love it. I mean, that's great life advice.
I mean, I think that's great for any facet of life. I mean, I know I need it.
Great life advice.
Yes.
Okay, as you can see, it's easy to teach a class with Layne in it. She's just awesome.
I talk too much.
No, she's awesome, man. What are you doing right after this?
I'm going to that workplace.
Oh, yeah.
I got a job this summer, so
awesome.
Got to make that money.
So you got to go in there and talk to him about working there? You have an interview?
I'm taking a resume, and I think, hopefully, I have the job already.
Oh, great.
That's really weird. But yeah, so it's sort of backwards, but I am taking a resume in anyway.
Good for you.
And it should be great. I'm working with kids, working with foster kids, actually, so it'll be an amazing opportunity. Experience. And then, so 20 years old, so you'll be teaching when you're about 22, 23, right? Yes.
I can't wait, man.
That's insane to think about. I don't feel like, I mean, I know a lot
It'll happen before you know it. It'll happen before you know it, man.
I know time's flying. Like I said, I can't believe I'm beyond 19 in my teenage years now. So.
Okay, young lady. Well, I'm really proud of you. And you go knock them dead in that interview.
And you have a great birthday. Oh, my goodness. I didn't even know. But happy birthday.
No, thank you. And we'll see you next Wednesday.
I'll see you next Wednesday.
So we are at the What You Can Do Tomorrow section. And the problem is that teachers need to form stronger bonds with students. The solution? Teachers need to leverage assessment to bond with kids. So what you can do tomorrow? I would apply the 7 strategies of assessment for learning to tomorrow's lesson plan. See how you do. See how many of them you can hit. Try to hit as many as you possibly can on every lesson creation. I would explore possibilities with the app called Voxer. I would explore possibilities with the Google extension called Mote. And then I would take a look at my next assessment. I would try to insert some revision and collaboration opportunities into that assessment. Please stop thinking about assessment as an event and start thinking about it as more of a process. The resulting collaborations you have with students could be magical. And good luck tomorrow engaging your kids.
Show notes for this episode can be found at jamesallensturnevant.com. If you enjoy Hacking Engagement, please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes.